know you're an officer, so it's a little different. I'm not looking for.
Sure. So I can tell you, I went to the Citadel, which is a prestigious military school in Charleston, South Carolina. And while I was there, 9/11 happened. So I joined the Army National Guard in what they call the simultaneous membership program. So I started out as a PFC, then a specialist, then a sergeant in the infantry. And so I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, practiced warfighting for 4 months in the forests of Georgia, graduated college, got commissioned in intelligence, and I worked in translations, interrogations. The Army is Army work. That's digging trenches, fighting, and being in cities. I didn't deploy to Afghanistan or Iraq. I was all around the United States. And then I started working in digital communications. I think from a forensic accounting standpoint, let alone just AI and the queries that I have put into Grok. If you go to my X account, it's John Kitover, Illinois, that's IL. And I will retweet some of my best Grok queries trying to untangle congressional borrowing and spending, borrowing from the Federal Reserve, really looking at our ledger books, our balance statements, and saying, you know what, guys like Darren LaHood are kicking the can down the road over and over, 10 years now. So this is my background, but I'm really trying to stop the borrowing and the spending. I think it has to become a mantra with Republicans. I'm standing with Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, Ron Paul. I supported the Ron Paul campaign from California. I have a good picture with him. And I just believe that we are digging a hole. We have to stop digging this hole of debt and borrowing and spending from the Federal Reserve. We have to cut Medicare, Medicaid. We have to cut the NDAA. And I think we can preserve Social Security, but cutting the military-industrial complex and big pharma are the number 2 priorities of my campaign. So that means Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, AstraZeneca, the hundreds of billions of dollars in tax credits that they got from the big beautiful bill, $500 billion a year from taxpayers in tax credits. That is the primary focus of my campaign.
You segued exactly where I wanted to go. I was just going to ask about the big beautiful bill. That was a huge expansion of spending. So I think you pretty much told us where you stand on that. You weren't exactly pro big beautiful bill then.
We can kill the 2 biggest problems in our society, which is the military-industrial complex and big pharma. We have to cut the Medicare and Medicaid by probably $1 billion to $2 billion a year, and the National Defense Authorization Act by about $200 to $400 billion a year. We'll be able to start paying down the debt. We can lower taxes, and we can stop funding big pharma, which is poisoning us, and the military-industrial complex, which is taxing us and doing military policing around the world. And Darren LaHood has kicked the can and funded this for 10 years. He's been a congressman in the 16th district, I think the connecting district before redistricting. But he is a can kicker. I'm going to crush his can, and I'm going to recycle it for the American people and for the people in the state of Illinois.
Let's talk about vaccinations. I'm not really clear on where you are on vaccinations, as far as if it's just the COVID vaccine or if what's your stand on other vaccines?
Let me just start with COVID-19 and that vaccine response. The HEROES Act in March of 2020 was the first $1 trillion tranche of omnibus bill that Darren LaHood voted for. And that is the start of it. That's when Pfizer was able to print up 30 billion cocktails. A lot of these vaccines were manufactured in India because it was a patent and it was mass produced around the world.
Yeah.
That's not variable medicine. That's giving one solution to everybody for a problem that Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates and the World Health Organization cooked up in Wuhan, China. So to just immediately go to the 72 vaccine schedule that young people have to take, we're living in a vaccine industrial complex. It's not a vaccine diet. This is not acute targeted medicine. This isn't variable. This morning on X, we read through MAHA and the February 18-page PDF that was put out by Secretary Kennedy and the NIH. And I think right now, Big Pharma and Kennedy are still colliding, and the gold standard in scientific research has yet to really been proven. I think we're still very much living in a big pharma, big medical industrial complex, which demands the money. And so again, cutting Medicare and Medicaid will choke big pharma, and I think it'll improve our health outcomes. I'm not a fan of all these vaccinations. It's out of control. But why does a 3-year-old need 72 injections? Can you explain that, George? It's insane what we're living with.
I am here, so I can't explain it. These are all diseases we're trying to keep that 3-year-old from having. My grandkids are getting vaccinated now. My children got vaccinated. We had no health problems from those vaccines. I can see why people were upset about on the COVID vaccine because it was, again, I said I was a nurse. One thing we were taught is always the patient's choice whether they take a medicine or they don't. They had COVID jammed down their throat, so I get the anger there. But I never really quite, yeah, I go back as conservative a long way. I'm almost 60 now. I never ran for Congress. I was a state councilman though in Georgia. So I've been involved in Republican politics for a long time. I don't think anyone would say anything other than a conservative. But the things like eliminating smallpox have gone a long way. We couldn't do that without those vaccines. The chicken pox, people live through that. My grandkids are getting, I believe my kids are getting the chicken pox one. I don't think it's hurting anyone. It's keeping them from scarring and later, and protecting from shingles a little bit later. But
I would just say that I've seen documentation from the George Bush administration that suggests that Operation Warp Speed was long in the making. I think this is the pandemic, scamdemic, plandemic. I don't trust it. The lockdowns, the baby diaper masks. People are very angry still. And when you bring up COVID-19 vaccines and the lockdown, Darren LaHood told his constituents by X, if you don't take this injection, this pandemic will never end. You have to get vaccinated, otherwise you'll never be able to go back to work. That's the type of messaging he put out on his X account. You can search it. Just go to Darren LaHood's X account, type in vaccine, and see what he told everybody. He was doing propaganda messaging, pushing out big pharma talking points. That's not leadership. That's doing what your lobbyists, multi-million-dollar contributors tell you to do. And he's telling everybody on his X account, his Facebook account with 27,000 followers. In my opinion, he's pushing propaganda, and he voted for it. And he took out he took out trillions of loans on your behalf to fund this. We're $37 trillion in debt. We have $100 trillion in unfunded debt liabilities. That's a total of $137 trillion. So everybody in this country owes over $100,000 right now to the federal government and the balance sheet. And Darren LaHood doesn't talk about it. All he talks about is how the big beautiful bill is so beautiful. It's not beautiful. It's taxation by loading it on the back end. So in my opinion, he is not leading the people in his district, and he's a failure as a congressional representative in the 16th district. And in Illinois, he's just a can kicker. And I just want to reiterate, everyone has to chant the mantra, stop borrowing, stop spending.
That is good to hear Cam say, because we go back into what some people call the bipartisan combine. Everyone's just taxing and spending. There really has not been a responsible financial party for a very long time. And it's good to hear people coming up through the ranks and running for office to say, yeah, we got to stop this, because it's not sustainable. You're absolutely right on that. I'm curious too, you went right for a congressional seat. Generally, people coming up through the ranks will say, oh, you're going to start, you'll start at city council, you'll start at the county board, you'll start at the township level. You went right for Congress. Mostly it seems because the job Darren LaHood's doing. And did you have any thought about starting lower and working up, or is this just you're passionate about ending LaHood's reign in Congress?
Let me just say, and that is what created this rocket that is trying to defeat Darren LaHood, because that experience of dealing with all kinds of low-down, dirty, grimy local politicians and the lawyers and let me just describe to you what happened. So I ran for committee person. I spent about 45 days at the Jefferson Park Blue Line stop. I hired people off of Craigslist. We gathered about 800 signatures. Every single signature was challenged by the Chicago champion. We were about 60 signatures short. But I filed an appeal. I had to go downtown, go through the election courts, had about 2 trials. The challenger, Estella Richards, the 45th Ward committee woman, never showed up. She couldn't provide any testimony, wouldn't provide any testimony in terms of questioning. So in my opinion, my constitutional rights were denied me. This is the ballot access.
Right.
I have no doubt that this time going around, we will get the total number of signatures to actually be on the ballot. It's less than 700.
Right.
And let me tell you, when you file for Congress, it only takes you 15 minutes to file. So my question is, where are the patriots and the Republicans in Peoria and Rockford that want to stand up to all this borrowing and spending? Where are the libertarians even that are not stepping up to the plate? A lot of people aren't getting anything for their vote, but they're still going to vote for Darren LaHood. Yeah. This is why I decided to run for Congress, because the issue is that important, that this is not just whether or not I win or get on the ballot. This is about creating communication, to as many people as possible to recite the mantra. Stop borrowing, spending. Every single year, we're borrowing $2 trillion and only taking in $5 trillion. So this is why I'm running and why we have to defeat Darren LaHood in Illinois 16.
It's like the old Illinois GOP mantra, it's not your turn yet, right? This is why no one's running, is they go up through their county GOP and they're told it's not your turn. Or in your case, I'm sure you would have been told, start smaller, start at the township level, start this. Of course, the Chicago GOP is so completely dysfunctional, maybe they didn't tell you that. But this is the same thing I hear over and over again as a top candidate, that they told it's not your turn.
Listen, it's everybody's turn. There should be 100 people lining up when there's no filing fee and it takes you 15 minutes. And now there's another Republican candidate running, and I think there's 4 Democrats running against Darren LaHood. So people are waking up and standing up. Darren LaHood really flies under the radar, but he has a very powerful position in Congress. So, in my opinion, the more people standing up to Darren LaHood, either we force him to start obeying our Constitution and give us a fair and balanced budget, or he's just going to keep plunging us into debt and creating future tax liabilities for your children. The guy is, in my opinion, dishonest, and I think we have to crush his can that he keeps kicking.
Let's switch up for a little bit. Let's talk about the district you're running for. Your district you're in Chicago, it's in Peoria, it's in Rockford. Let's talk gerrymandering. Where's our solution here? Right now, the Republicans, we're roughly half the state's electorate. We only have 3 congressional seats, one you're running for. Was it okay, or what's the answer here? As long as you're that outnumbered, how do we fix this?
Let me tell you, before working in the Treasury Department doing facilities management, I worked at the Census Bureau downtown Chicago. So I was opening and closing census offices, and it's a lot of work to open a census office and gather that data. And that is the only agency in our Constitution. All these other agencies are not there. The census is the only one that should technically be funded. Most of these other agencies, I think we could eliminate a large percentage of them. These are the top towns in the 16th district, and these are the towns that are for Darren LaHood. It's Rockford, which has 148,000 people. Peoria has 113,000. Bloomington, 78,000. Normal, 52,000. Packet, 31,000. Belvedere, 25,000. Lux Park, 22,000. I could go on and on. There's a lot of cities. The way to really deal with this gerrymandering and all this insane districting, when you see the map, it looks like this crazy jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
So, from my experiences working at the census and hearing and listening and working with higher-ups, there's a lot of corruption when it comes to this districting and the Census Bureau itself. So I think the Trump administration has put forth a bill saying that illegal aliens will no longer be allowed in the districting maps. So there's a lot of ways to clear it up. And the number way to clear up all these problems is transparency. And actually having access to the data that the Commerce Department puts out and what the legislature is using here in the state of Illinois. But running for Congress, I'm looking at bigger issues than just districting here. I'm looking at the national debt, which could sink this ship that we are all on. Illinois is in a fiscal crisis. Chicago's in a fiscal crisis.
Yeah.
Illinois has $200 billion in debt and $60 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. My father is a retired Chicago police officer. And in my opinion, Chicago and Illinois are being run like clown town. This is clown world we're living in. People aren't transparent. All they want to do is racial identity politics, and we're not being fiscally conservative. This is my biggest gripe that Elon Musk helped expose, which is through Doge. If you look at all the screenshots on the Doge X account, it's all for DEI and climate change education. Hundreds of billions of dollars in education grants. Northwestern isn't getting anything, was it $500 million? All of these huge institutions that have huge endowments, why is the federal government funding all of this? We're $37 trillion in debt. So again, I want to reiterate the mantra, stop borrowing, stop spending.
They're funding it because Democrats are in charge, just like more Democrats, right? You turn schools into your propaganda bills. Not saying Northwestern isn't an excellent school, you wouldn't get an excellent education. education there, but it's also turned out a lot of excellent socialists and communists over the last 20 years. That's why that's
They're
it.
winning, George. They're winning, and they're in control of our money. Illinois is a Democrat industrial complex. I have a book over here from the Democratic Party in the 1950s. They don't look like that today. They are so unprofessional and so Marxist and so radical. The stuff that comes out of Chicago politics is absolutely deranged. The mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, he said just the other day that white structural racism and supremacy is the blame for the 600 deaths during the heat wave in 1997. You know, what's that have to do with the debt and deficits? The Chicago Public Schools has, what I said, or $715 million debt or something. So the point is, they're not talking accountants and forensic accountants and people, financially minded people running the government, not the insane political spam that they spew every single day. Darren LaHood does it the same way, but in a different way. He takes photos with veterans, takes photos with the police. You know, his dad, Ray LaHood, is an Obama transportation secretary. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and in my opinion, Obama is the worst president this country has ever had. There's other things about Ray LaHood that people shouldn't forget. That he had $50,000 in cash that some Nigerian scammer gave him, that the FBI investigated, and the FBI took Darren LaHood's laptop. So this is a very politically connected family, a very powerful family, and I need this video to hopefully go viral so people can donate to this campaign to defeat Darren LaHood, because he's going to keep kicking the can and create $2 trillion a year every single term he gets. So if you want to stop the borrowing and spending with me, go to johnforcongress.com. You can text the campaign directly at 312-498-0517. And on johnforcongress.com, click on the blog section. You can see our antidote link to make a donation. I'll update the site after this interview because hopefully I'll push it out and we'll get a lot of views and raise more money, because I live in Chicago in the Northwest Side. I'm going to drive up to Rockford. I'm going to drive to Peoria. I'm going to drive to Bloomington and Normal, Illinois, and I hope to meet people in the streets or at the bars or at the train stops who have watched this video and want to sign on the petition to defeat Darren LaHood.
Your district is frankly crazy too, the way they drew that up. And again, it's another way to, it's all about suppressing the Republican vote. You wonder why people aren't lining up to run for it. Who wants to drive from Chicago to Rockford, Peoria every weekend? Which is where you're at, right? You've got to reach out, you got to knock on doors, you got to talk to people, and they put you in a position where it's almost impossible to cover the ground you need to cover to actually win this thing.
It's not that many signatures, so I'm not stressed about it. To become a committee person in the Chicago GOP, it's the same number of signatures as it is to become a congressperson.
Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous.
It's insane. And I think there's a lot of Republicans, and this is the interesting thing. If you go to Darren LaHood's X account and you look at the comments section, it's nothing but hate for Darren LaHood. And I know a lot of it is probably liberal Democrats replying, but there are a lot of Republicans that are sick of the borrowing and spending.
That's the frustrating part of our demographic, I think. Like I said, this is something that we talk about a lot, but don't act on it. When we do act on it, going back to the big beautiful bill, there are good things or there are bad things that we're taking on conservative as a bad thing. Let's talk about, or let's go back and talk about what we're talking about too. That's their identity-based politics and everything. The amount of hatred there is out there now. What do you think the answer is there? How do we bring not just Republicans back into the fold that may have left because of things like deficit, but also bring Democrats around to thinking where they're a loyal opposition again, as opposed to just crazy race-baiting lunatics that they're out for blood and hate the president. You know, I mean, there's not a lot of logic to what we're doing. How do we fix this?
I hope you get a chuckle out of my response here. So I would just ask for a moment of silence and stillness and take the deepest breath of the day. Hold it for 10 seconds. It's wisdom and education. So I think I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of yoga, reading a lot of books, going to the gym. For me, preparing for this moment, it's the now. So I feel like my whole life, the destiny has led up to running against Darren LaHood in the 60th district.